audience, welcome very much to Conversations. Pleasure to welcome to the program David Gibson. And David Gibson is a curator, an amazingly busy curator that has, and is also an art writer. And he has a number of websites that we're going to make available to you in the course of this, blog spots and so forth, that are unbelievably rich in terms of the work he's done being concerned with the world of art. And it's a great pleasure, David, to welcome you to Conversations.
Thank you.
Could you share a little of your own background, born and raised? I understand your dad was a curator or involved in the art world, but could you share your own born and raised a little bit, and then we'll talk about art and
Sure.
so forth.
I'm a native New Yorker,
Right.
born and raised here. Went to private schools,
Which one?
York Preparatory School.
Is that here in New York?
Yeah, it's currently located at like 68th between Central Park West and Columbus.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But when I went there, it was on the east side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good experience?
Yes, very good teachers, great. It had a tiered system, so, and also, so each grade had 4 levels. So,
what were the levels determined by?
honor 1, 2, 3, 4, something
I
like
see,
that, basically.
yeah,
And each year had 3 terms.
That's when you were a youngster, even.
Yeah, this was in the 80s.
You recommend going to a private school for the early as opposed to
I went to private schools because my father wanted it, and I needed it because I was born with a case of epilepsy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are really no epilepsy schools. Right. There are learning disability schools.
Yeah.
And back at that time, there was probably nothing in the public system for that. We didn't have any of these ISs that we have nowadays. Independent schools. There's a lot more variety in the public school system now than there was in the late 60s. Yeah. And it's a lot more innovative now than it once was. So I went mainly to private schools, Little Dalton, Gateway, all these little schools with small classrooms, like 6 kids in a class. So you really had almost like private education,
almost down to tutoring.
Right, it is sort of like just sort of minimal group tutoring. And
I would expect you also had at the home an enriched intellectual thing around the dinner table.
Yes.
It's very important, maybe more important than the school, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, my father was from Chicago, and he had, after he had gotten out of his military service, he had worked as a salesperson for Grove Press.
Okay,
selling books all across the country. He spent about
books,
3 years hawking Henry Miller's and D.H. Lawrence's, to university bookstores and independent booksellers across the country. And he was making frequent stops in New York. And then in the, early 60s, he met my mother. She was a recent graduate of Cooper Union.
Okay.
And she was originally, her family was originally from Cincinnati, but they had moved to New York after middle school, and she had basically been living in Jackson Heights.
Okay, and she was intellectually inclined or culturally inclined?
Yes, she was.
So you had a privileged upcoming.
She was a poet at the age of 18, and and she was involved. She knew a lot of artists. She went to school with Eva Hess and Hannah Wilke and all these, female artists who were doing body art and feminist art and performance art and so forth.
Art's a many-splendored thing.
It really is.
It really is. And to be immersed in that at the home setting is really important. And I don't want to get, I don't want to go somewhere if we don't want to, but you said you had epilepsy.
Yeah.
I'm ignorant. I'm not sure, but with epilepsy, you get seizures at
Yes, it's an irregular firing of the neurons in the brain.
Right.
Where you have a sort of a clogged drain a bit, It just sort of comes and goes, and then all of a sudden, you have a big clog, and the clog opens up, and everything rushes out at once. So then you have a seizure. But most people think of them as, the big you fall down, bite your tongue, all that stuff. It's not true. Most seizures are really just like that. They're just a slight pause in your behavior. So no driving for me, no climbing, no lifting heavy things. Throughout most of my years in summer camp and things like that, I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things. I really preferred the most structured sort of activities, like the family played tennis, and it was a really a good game. The hand-eye coordination thing really developed and helped me with that. Now
you were good at tennis?
I was very good at tennis.
Were you good at ping pong?
I was good at volleyball.
Volleyball.
Yes.
Yeah, volleyball. Yeah, and badminton.
Yeah, that whole moving around.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain way to do this. There's a certain way to do this. The people back here do this. The people up here do this. There's a connection, and it was like bing, bing, bing. So I was good at those things. The other thing that I was good at, really, right around the same time that they found the epilepsy, they actually found that when I went in for my first grade or kindergarten IQ test, they tested me at a third grade reading level. I could read the New York.
At third grade?
I could, no, when
you were 5 years old?
When I was 5, I could read the New York Times.
So you had good cognitive ability,
yes,
intelligence,
yes,
and so forth. Yeah. Well, you had a good genetic input.
Yes.
And you also had a good family background and a wonderful educational pattern. No wonder you turned out to be such a beautiful adult human being, huh? Yeah, according for that. But they were interested in, and you've been interested in, art. And maybe you could share, did you do any university training or anything beyond the school? And
I went to I only did my undergraduate. I went to a small college north of Boston called Bradford College.
Okay.
At the time, I was really interested in writing and eventually getting an MFA in creative writing.
You write beautifully.
Thank you.
Your blogs, I was all over it. It was really good. Yeah,
thank you. So I had a desire to be a novelist and maybe work in publishing, and those things didn't really happen for me because I just wasn't sort of an on-track person. I came into school sort of knowing what I wanted to do, and then
what is it you wanted to do?
Well, I basically wanted to work in publishing. I was very inspired by Maxwell Anderson and all that stuff,
Right.
And there were some other more contemporary versions. Gary Fisketton, who published the entire series for Random House in the 80s. Okay. They did this vintage contemporary series where they were publishing first-time novelists like Jay McInerney's Bright Lights, Big City, and they were republishing novels by people who had become less known, like at the time, Cormac McCarthy and Barry Hannah and so forth.
Right.
Also, a lot of...
Is Bennett Cerf associated with Random House or not? Or am I wrong off base?
Who?
Bennett Cerf? No.
Yeah, I think
that goes back to my time. I think he's older.
Yes. Fisketton was important. He had come out of Alfred A. Knopf, and then he had done a series for them. And then he had graduated to the big times with Random House, and he had published this series of novels, which really set the gold standard for novel publishing.
Yeah, right.
And they were, for the first time, they had gone from being the little commercial paperbacks to the trade paperbacks, the large, which now are switched, and now they call the large ones the commercials and the other ones the trades.
Right,
because it's just it's just more accessible.
Did you have you had an ambition to write?
I did. I did.
Who did you like from the literary overall? I mean, who inspired you in terms of the style or approach to expressing the human language through print?
Yeah,
novel.
I've always been.
You're not talking nonfiction.
No, I've always been very inspired by fiction.
Yeah.
I love Faulkner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Steinbeck.
Yeah.
East of Eden is an amazing novel.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Probably better than Grapes of Wrath, which everyone.
You think so? Yeah.
Well,
the way it's written.
It's very personal. People don't know. It's sort of his David Copperfield, his story of growth. And it's a great story about the American West.
I saw Norman Mailer in an interview one time, and he said he thought the very best way to express anything in the human condition is through fiction.
Right.
Better than anything you're trying to do with bullet points. And
well, stuff, it is. It is because there's a depth and there's this degree of artifice, this notion that you can, create something that's greater than
reality.
Yes, exactly.
Improve upon reality, yeah.
But the problem that I had as a
Mm.
fiction writer was that I always felt that reality was so strong that I wasn't worthy at the time. You know,
You used the word artifice.
artifice.
Artifice, and that I don't know the etymology, but it does have art in it.
Well,
and you are a person involved in the arts.
Artifice is basically the act of it is how do I say this? Artifice is the texture, you know, the depth of something that is meant as in addition to reality.
Thank you. In addition to.
Yes, like a work of art that evokes an experience. We've perhaps had the experience, but it makes it greater because we go to the work of art to re-evoke that experience.
Do we know the etymology of the word art? What does it come? Is it tagged to artifice?
It probably is related. I'm sure.
The way you describe
it does sound like an old Latin or Greek word that you know perhaps we've forgotten the etymology, but we remember the word.
Yeah,
so,
and it's also huge. C.P. Snow used to talk about, you know, the science and the arts and the conflict and everything. So the arts are a very many-splendored thing. Yeah. And it goes all the way from, I don't know, where do you begin? Built environment, architecture.
The cave paintings of Lascaux.
Yes, aren't they something else?
Or the Venus of Willendorf.
I know. It's really amazing, yeah. But no, it goes all the way through, but it also includes things like poetry. It includes music. It includes all of these things that have to do with the goods of, what might be called the goods of civilization rather than the mundane making of cookies or something. Or automobiles, you know, the mundane, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's a world where you've been dwelling.
Yes, I grew up in this world. So I came out of college, graduated in 1994.
In what degree? Accounting?
No.
I'm making a joke, pal.
Let's not talk to my accountant about that. No, I had at Bradford. You didn't really have to have a specific degree. It was more that you majored in a field, and then it was really, you know, they weren't about to go. The degrees they gave at Bradford were not about telling people, you know, exactly what the person was about. You know, it was more that they had gotten this overall education and the sort of old-fashioned gentleman's education. This was a school that dates back to 1803.
Wow, that's way back.
And that's as a college, as an academy, it dated back to the 1700s.
Wow.
And had been it had started as a boys' school, but for only 20 years. Then had become a girls' school.
That early,
finishing
they
school.
were ahead of the curve.
One of the first girls' finishing schools, and it was actually the daughter of Grover Washington Jr. Had gone there. She was the first African American, probably in any girls' finishing school in America.
How did you pick Bradford? Was it? It wasn't legacy. Your dad hadn't been there, or was it?
No, it wasn't a legacy. I had the desire, you know, to get out of New York for a few years.
What's wrong with New York?
Nothing wrong with it, but you know,
just you know,
you're young. You're young.
Yeah.
You've read a little Kerouac. You want to get on the road. You don't want to go too far. You know, you don't want to go too far. Yeah. But you know, I like the idea of a college with you know, Roman columns and a little ivy on the brick walls. You know, I knew that type of experience could only be had outside of the urban, you know, environment, unless I wanted to go to.
You had that experience in the education. It was almost tutorial when you were in the earlier grades.
Yeah.
But the tutorial thing, it became tutorial in that.
Well, and Bradford was a small school as well. I mean,
what other schools were you saw? Antioch? Or no, that's thought of.
The other schools that I considered going to were Ithaca College.
Really? Okay.
I had taken a summer of SAT prep courses there the previous year, and I really enjoyed it.
You enjoyed the process of taking the SAT tutorial?
No. I just enjoyed being up on the campus. You know, I enjoyed the countryside. Yeah, it was a summer program.
Yeah, right.
I did actually do one semester at Alfred University, which is in that area, sort of halfway between, Ithaca and Cooperstown.
Okay.
In that run.
Well, I was thinking like educational institution. What you give some thought to education, particularly with the arts in mind and everything, and what is the best track for kids? You thought it was good to go to a prep school.
Well, that was my experience.
It was your experience.
Most of my friends were artists, and their children go to public schools. So
yeah.
I don't really know if the track itself is important. What's important is just to have, an openness to many things.
Right.
We have a generation of children now whose parents are artists, and their children are mathematicians and scientists.
Why is that?
Oh, for the same reason that one generation is liberal and another is conservative.
Do you think it goes like that?
I think it goes back and forth.
My daddy was conservative.
Well, I mean, there's two things we can do when we're young. We can either emulate our parents, we can elevate them to the level of the gods and emulate them, or we can challenge them and say, your experience wasn't my experience, and I'm going to criticize you.
Right.
And I mean,
same attitude toward the human condition at large.
Yeah, I think
so. Two attitudes to take it, whether you go along with the groove that's coming out of history or you want to bring some change and so forth.
Well, if
creativity, I've heard some people say, if I may, we're talking about the arts and you're deeply enmeshed in it and so forth, and I really appreciate it. And again, your sites are so rich. It's really, really, really good and highly recommended. But I've heard people to compare the artist and the creative artist. And I don't know if there's creative and then mundane art, I don't know, or if there's high art and then art that is utilitarian or something like that, but to a criminal class. Because there isn't a standard paradigm, and then if it's like the fish are swimming in the water, you have to be outside the water to be able to see something new. And is it important that there be something new in terms of the advancement of art, or can we repair to classical traditions and so forth? And how do we do it? Because you're an art critic and an art writer, so these are things you probably think about.
Well, the thing that I've experienced, and this is both from a professional and a personal standpoint, is that there are basically two reasons to like art or make art, and
we got to define art.
I'm going to.
Okay.
Well, we don't have to define art. What we have to define is our relationship to art. Because
I wanted a definition because it does include all the way from architecture to.
Well, I mean, there are many things that one could call art these days.
Music.
These days, in the art galleries, you're going to find people revisiting ceramics and wallpaper and even many decorative art things, which would nearly considered, textiles, functional, decorative, are coming into the mainstream of these. Art students are basically looking everywhere for influence, and
I've seen some what do you call rugs that are just absolutely gorgeous.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
but the two purposes of art, are either to serve our values or to challenge them.
That's back what we were talking about earlier. Yeah,
it's that either the art is there to criticize society and
to celebrate it,
or to celebrate. Well, not necessarily to celebrate, but to serve it. Shall we
serve it? Okay.
Because there are a lot of people out there whose idea of art is an oil painting at the Metropolitan Museum, and that's it.
Well, that is a lot of good art there.
There is a lot of good art, but there's also a lot of good art that's made digitally, that's installation based.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good art that is just film editing.
Right.
But the problem is that the so-called visual artist, the artist working in a fine art tradition, doesn't really have a place in mainstream society.
Working in what again? Say it again.
In the fine arts.
In the fine arts. Or high art. Can we differentiate between high art and pedestrian art, or efforts at, or how do we define? How do we set aside a great work of art when we say a masterpiece like a David or Michelangelo or something like that? And by what criteria are we able to identify those things that really stand out and are iconic down the ages? You know what I'm saying? From a lot of stuff that is done that is pedestrian.
Well, I mean, this is again what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. When you talk about an artist like David or Michelangelo, you're talking about not only something that is considered already art and art history, but that also...
Well, it's a masterwork.
No, it's a masterwork.
Yeah.
But underneath the attitude towards the masterwork is this idea that art represents an ideal.
Okay, right.
You know?
Yeah.
So we can say that David is a masterpiece.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I agree. But you know, I could also say that Jeff Koons is a masterpiece.
Red Grooms?
Jeff Koons.
I know, but what about Red Grooms?
I like Red Grooms
yeah,
too.
He's
yeah,
funny.
sure,
He's really
sure.
funny, yeah.
Sure.
Lil Abner, you know, Al Cap, or
Sure.
you know, Rockwell, or Norman Rockwell.
But Andy Warhol is also a masterpiece.
Yes, right.
And Jackson
Tomato
Pollock
Can.
is also
Yeah.
a masterpiece. But
Right.
there's a lot of people who don't, you know, and these are one of a number of artists with something approaching, you know, name brand status.
Okay,
but,
name
you know,
brand, yeah.
But in New York, there are at least 200,000 or 300,000 artists all trying to make it.
Okay, you're talking all the various venues of what we call art.
Yeah.
You're not talking just about painting.
Well, I mean,
you know,
painting,
you write a lot on painting, and
painting,
you curate.
sculpture, video, photography.
Do you cover the lot with your writing and your curating, or not? Or do you tend to be with the painting galleries? A lot of people think of art as painting, you know, primarily.
Well, New York is a painter's town.
Well, okay.
And there's a tradition of that dating back to the Ashcan School, you know.
I don't know that, yeah.
Oh, and the Hudson River.
Hudson River, yeah.
Well, Ashcan basically are the people a decade later from the Hudson River School who were painting in New York.
Okay.
They were painting. They were painting poor people, poor neighborhoods.
Right.
You know. You know, social strife, things like that, but not in an idealistic political way. In a more impressionistic way about everyday life. So that's why they were called the Ashcan.
I see. Okay.
They were painting the dregs of the Depression, but not in a political way, in just a way to show everyday life.
Dorothea Lange photography, or what's that guy? The Arabs downtown.
There's a wonderful
artist.
There's a wonderful artist. Yeah, Jacob Rees.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's photography.
Yes.
So that's getting into another medium.
There's a wonderful artist named Steve Mumford who basically was kind of, I believe, to some degree stuck in his process. And he decided that he was going to travel to Iraq and paint the war.
Wow. How can you paint a war?
He's the Eakins of his generation.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, right.
You know?
Right.
He got a press ID and he got attached to a unit.
And did he what medium? Video or what?
No.
Video.
Watercolor.
Watercolor.
Yes.
Okay.
He traveled to Iraq for 3 years. He did several trips to Iraq. He
got embedded with the troops?
He got embedded with the troops. He himself, I think he had previous military experience, so he was able to, you know, speak on their terms. And he did 2 or 3 solo shows at the Postmasters Gallery in Chelsea with this. And at the last one that I went, the first show that he had of this work, the troupe came to his opening in full dress.
Oh, no kidding. Really? So he would have gotten around, right?
They loved him.
Nailed it,
They loved him, yeah.
Now, what can an artist who's working, would he work in oil or acrylic or water or what?
These were watercolors. Now he's extending them, and he's not necessarily going back there as much. He did a few trips where he painted the troops. He also painted the everyday life of the Iraqis, sort of like, not, you know, bombs bursting in air sort of thing, but, you know, people going about their daily lives.
Was it all impressionistic, or was it figurative, or what was this?
It was figurative.
It
was true to life, you know. He would go out there and paint as long as he had a safe call, you know. You know.
And the troops really cottoned to what he was representing.
Yes.
And what he represented through that, rather than through photography, was something unique that he brought to it. Right?
Yes, exactly.
And that's something that we celebrate and should celebrate.
Yes.
I'm not familiar. I'd like to be. Do you have him on your website, any of his work?
He's not an artist that I've shown personally. I just have a lot of respect for what he did.
I see, okay.
I think that it's something that people could appreciate on several levels.
What about photography?
It's published. Yeah. His work has all been published now, you know.
What about with Ernie Powell writing in the Second War, and we had cartoons, Malden doing cartoons and that, and then we had photography. We had photography. We had photography in the Civil War. I guess Brady was just starting with the daguerreotype and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Now we have that famous one, the Magnum photos. You know, Magnum photos. They published a lot of photojournalists, and that famous one, the same Civil War, the Spanish Civil War. Do you know that famous one? I think it was what's his name. What was his name? Anyway, it come to me. But where they got the flag up and they're up on top of a hill. It was famous. He happened to get that at a moment, right?
Right.
And those kind of things have iconic value. That's photography, right?
Right.
Do you cover photography or video, both as a journalistic thing or as an artistic thing, electronic art, Hemschweiler or any of the video artists? Or maybe I'm getting far afield.
No, I've been very interested in, as a critic.
Yeah.
I found that, I was being asked to write about well-known artists. So I was doing that for a
Asked by whom?
Editors of the magazines.
Magazines. You're writing for magazines.
Yes.
Is there a wide variety of venues that you can write for? And is there a lively, business model for the expression of artistic, critical observation? Or
the industry of...
Yeah, how is the industry? Yeah. Could I interject something? I mentioned you on the telephone that there was a guy, Thomas Wolfe, had written a book called The Painted Word.
Sure.
I remember reading that, and it was the OK Harris Gallery down there. Good guy, we did. But The Painted Word, essentially, if I remember, you tell me if it's right, he said, it's not the art that matters, it's what the critic writes about the art. And that the critic says that this is beautiful, this plum on top of a cactus is really gorgeous, and so everybody says, gee, isn't that gorgeous? That what the critic's eye, and you get the great critics who talk about it, they're the ones who do it. And poor Vincent van Gogh painted all those paintings, and nobody paid any attention because they said, paint something from, it's too impressionistic, or, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So are the critics the one who really set the pace for the art world and pick out what's really good, and the public just goes along with it? Or is there something really there that the critic sees that the people don't see? Do they have to be led around like sheep?
Oh, no, not at all.
No, okay.
Not at all. I think that there's always going to be, for instance, in movie reviews, we have the movies that the critics like, and then we have the movies that are popular and that people cotton to.
Often the popular is not particularly good in a critical sense.
Perhaps.
Same with art
true.
or not?
Well, but there's an audience for both. There's an audience for the people who write about art, and go to see what the critics say, and there's an audience for art that just goes to see the art, and then maybe afterwards they read the critics to see if the critic agrees with them.
Yeah, but you can follow a critic. If a critic is really good, you can follow it. They had Norman Rockwell used to have paintings in Post magazine that were very popular and so forth.
Right.
I personally thought he was very good, but he was thought of as sort of lowbrow by a lot of people who thought of art in highbrow terms. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, and my background in art is probably about as far from Norman Rockwell as you could possibly get.
Okay.
The gallery that my father had in Soho, he started his gallery the same year I was born, 1967.
Okay.
And he had a gallery on Madison Avenue and 67th Street, and he was showing
67, 57.
67.
67.
67.
Okay, I thought
yeah.
57 is
No. There's a lot of galleries in the 60s, and a lot of them
what avenue?
Near Madison.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah.
And it was actually funny. It was in a solarium. So it was a small room with lots of windows, lots of light.
Yeah.
And he was showing, work by Richard Serra, who now does these big torped ellipse cast metal pieces. He was showing Warhol silver pillows.
Okay.
He was showing model constructions for Christo pieces, like who did the
Thing in the Park.
The Thing in the Park.
Others, yeah.
That was really wonderful.
Yeah.
And in '72, he moved to Soho and opened a 5,000 square foot gallery.
That's pretty good size.
Yeah. And this is
Where is that in Soho? Yeah.
Well, it was the first major gallery. Was 392 West Broadway. And
what year would that have been?
72.
That's when it was just coming.
Yes.
Soho was starting to happen.
Exactly.
The art scene seems to be like a movable feast. It seems to follow the low rent.
It follows the low rent, but it also follows
the artists have to follow the
where
low
people
rent.
Want to be. I mean, right now we still have many galleries in Chelsea. We still have a few galleries left in Soho. We have galleries in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's happening.
The Dumbo section of Brooklyn. We have galleries in Carroll Gardens, Fort Greene. We even have a couple galleries in Red Hook, and we have a whole lot of galleries on the Lower East Side.
Yeah, but you know where else you got a lot of galleries? I live on Schmatter Row, in the Garment District.
That's true.
And there are lots of art. I went about 4 or 5 years ago to a gallery was there, and they were the first ones to set up a gallery. Now they're all over the place.
Right.
And actors. So they, if they're not mistaken, the artists usually have very short shrift in terms of compared to computer programmers and accountants. In terms of financial, they're usually on the edge. Many of them are.
Yes, that's true.
Many of them are. I wonder what that relationship means and everything. So what they do is they need space, and so they have to have a space where the rents are not so high. So they move in, and then the bankers come, and then the rents go up, and then they have to move around. So they went to Soho, and then to Tribeca, and then to Clinton, or where? No, Chelsea. And now they're coming back to the Schmatter Row.
Most of the galleries in New York were started by artists.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Not okay. That's
I mean,
interesting.
Chelsea is basically Soho 2.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because you know
that's what
when the rents tripled when we had the last recession between
didn't it go to
89 and 93 or so.
Didn't it go to Tribeca for a while or no?
Not really.
Not really.
Not
No,
really.
okay,
Because
okay.
those are already too many sound stages and
it's already into film, right?
Yeah, it's film.
Sundance
De Niro
and
Town.
De Niro
you know.
and all that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And that's different from art.
Well,
that's
yes,
part of
this
art.
is the big commercial world, you know, the main commercial world of galleries as businesses is Chelsea, or at least that's
the moment.
That's the model. There's also galleries on 57th Street.
They've
There's
always
galleries
been there, right?
along Madison Avenue between, you know, the 59th and 79th, you know, and so forth. But the model that was Soho became Chelsea.
Okay.
Basically, they all had to move. The spaces were being taken over by fashion houses and boutiques.
And the rents went up.
Yes. Well,
the rent is a real big factor, it seems to me, for the artist anyway.
Well, the same happened in 1980. My father's gallery closed in 1980 because the rents tripled.
Yeah, the bankers move in with all those big bonuses, and so the rents go up. It's gentrification.
Right.
It's one of the downsides. So
then in '84,
gentrification.
he opened another gallery at 568 Broadway, and he was there through 2001.
Okay.
So he was showing conceptual art.
Okay.
Joseph Beuys, Armand, Christo, and a lot of other younger artists who aren't as well known. Dennis Oppenheim.
How does Dennis Oppenheim? Well, yes. I know a guy who's in a video that name. But anyway, how does a gallery owner decide what he's going to show? And how important is it? And you say that most of the galleries are opened by artists who would want to show maybe their own work and the work of their friends.
Right.
But, well, what I'm trying to say,
that's how it happened. That's how it happened.
The presentation. It'd be like in culinary arts, it'd be the presentation.
Right. Well, that's how it happened in Williamsburg. Williamsburg was usually a bunch of people who shared a studio. One person decided they were really much more of an entrepreneur, and they were the ones who like organized all the open studios. Eventually, it became a gallery. People moved to their own studios. It became a gallery, and like that. Also, a lot of these.
It's like Vanity Press and
No, not Vanity at all.
It's not like that.
No.
But they want to show their own.
These are not like 10th Street galleries back in the day where everybody was a member and everybody paid for a little wall space.
Or auto-publishing because you can't get a publisher to accept it because you got a whole editorial board and a canon that has to be met. And that applies to virtually all the activity in the human society. Certain people set the template of what's
These are being run by people who are professionals in their field.
Okay.
Like
Magnum Photos.
Yes, like Magnum Photos, exactly. They're an agent, for the artists.
Okay, that's good. Somebody should be for the artists.
Yes, and they're impresario in their own way.
Yeah.
So that's who the art gallerist, the art dealer is. He's an impresario for his artists and for the brand whatever it is that people would consider, John Gibson to be or David Gibson to be is that brand of artist,
And you cover that art scene very well, and you cover it very, very well. I'm telling you got all that kind of stuff. But say, if we take another analogy, I'm jumping around everything, so like movies, okay? Movies, I got a friend who's a character actor, really good, or Broadway or theater or whatever. They're all sort of interrelate. But in the movie industry, for instance, it's all a matter of stars. You have a star, and 8/10 of the budget has to pay the guy who manages or the gal who happens to become a star, a name. It's got marketing potential. Is it the same in the arts? That we have certain stars, and that the vast majority of people who would want to be, let's say in film is certainly the case, would want to be an actor, cannot be in market terms accommodated, and there's certain stars who stand out. And is it like that in all? Like in golf, we got Tiger Woods. We don't need anybody else because he's really good. Or we got Michelangelo, and we got you know what I'm saying? Well, what about the vast number of people who want to be artists but can't make it?
Well, but they do make it. It's just
you
that
think
we,
so?
no,
No.
there's a lot of people not paying attention.
But you know what I'm saying?
There are a lot of people in the movie business who get work. They have their trade card and they get jobs. They don't get star jobs, but they get jobs and they live off their work.
They're not
they don't
very
get to
many
be famous, but they do get work.
Okay, if you say so. I think it's really like, okay, let me
They
go
do
beyond
they
movie
do
actors.
be
The little
movies.
thing you can do ads and things like that. I'm talking about a commercial world,
Sure.
and it's really hard to make your way as a poet. You want to try and make your way and pay the rent and get the things you have to do and get the material benefits by being a poet. It's a little difficult compared to being an accountant.
There's a difference.
Or something
there's
that's
a difference
mundane.
between look, in order to be a star in the art world, you would need major support, not just from one gallery, but 3 or 4 galleries.
You need a lot
around
of good
the
PR.
world.
You need a lot of
You would
PR.
need the collectors to be behind you.
And you'd have
you
to
would
have
need the collectors to. It's an organic system.
Yeah.
You know, but there has to be a lot of support around the art world for a certain person. Like, for instance, in the last few years, the art world has really been pushing Richard Prince, who's they're trying to push him as the next Warhol.
Okay. That's huge.
So
yeah,
yes, right, exactly. So he has a gallerist in L.A., a gallerist in New York, a gallerist in London.
It's PR, yeah.
Yes, it's PR, but it's also sales. Yeah. They're all putting full-page ads for his shows in all the art magazines. They cost $3,000 a page.
It's a lot of money.
Exactly.
It's a business.
Yes.
Like it is, right?
And the collectors are buying the work, and the collectors are selling the work at auction. And there's a lot of press for that. The newspapers write up how much things get sold for, and
And they make movies about it.
Yes, exactly.
And that sort of thing, and see that up. And then they got a thing on. You notice they got a thing on Antiques Roadshow on on public television, and they have something that somebody had in the attic, and they bring it out, and it's got intrinsic value. Let's say it's a piece of sculpture. It's got intrinsic value in art terms or something like that. But what really the closer, or the thing that makes it exciting, is that piece, rather than having sat in the attic or made by Aunt Sally or something like that, is going to fetch $3 million at Sotheby's. The materialistic value assigned to the piece of work is what is driving the whole thing. And the intrinsic value of the art that's being created by the artist is a little... Poor Vincent didn't sell a single painting, right? Because he was ahead of his time. That kind of thing.
Well...
And are there a lot of artists who suffer that? And why do we pay such little attention and give such a reward or set up a society where people can be free to practice something so important as creative, the arts, the goods of civilization, and put all the attention on making cookies or making automobiles or making something, or a business?
I wish that I had brought an actual artwork.
To
put here behind us.
You're
so
a work of art,
about it.
You're a work of art.
Yes. But still, I mean, I had about 3 years ago, I was producing an artist panel series for the 92nd Street Y.
Oh, 92nd? You might start thinking of doing that over here, maybe.
That would be great.
Maybe we should give you the papers before you leave. Don't let me forget. No, seriously, you could become a producer.
So anyway, the show was called Real Art Today.
Okay.
And the whole idea was based on the famous club of the abstract expressionists, in which they would all get up in front of each other, and they had to really just talk about the work. They had to present the ideas in the work. They weren't allowed to get up there and list their resumes. They weren't allowed to get up there. And in my show, I didn't allow anyone to bring a disc or slides. They had to bring an actual artwork with them. Either a bunch of small things that could be handed
You brought
around.
some things, too. I don't know if it's relevant.
Yes,
we brought some things if you want to get to them. But go ahead, talk about it.
Yes. So anyway, so they would bring the artwork, and we would all gather in a circle, and we would talk about it, and they would present their work. Each person got about half an hour to talk, and maybe about 10 minutes to talk questions.
And you're talking about technical questions, the brush stroke and the tension of the color
it was about
of the red.
why you make your art and what your art's about. I think I have an artist friend who says that when painters get together, they always talk about their brushes. But
I've got a couple
I
brushes.
tend to differ because
I've got a couple
I
brushes.
think that what's interesting is to talk about ideas, because ideas are what we can share.
Artists have ideas. They're intellectuals. I mean, it's an intellectual part of the thing. Why do we pay such little attention to our intellectuals and so much to our political and economic leaders? Why is all the news political and there's very little to do with the goods of civilization?
There is very little.
And art.
Yeah.
And that's what lives down through the ages,
right,
the art.
Right, it's true.
Why are we so myopic, the human society? Why don't we pay more attention to the writers of art and people who write and curate really good art shows, and give more attention to the people who work in that realm, like this guy Gibson, his name, David Gibson.
Good one. Good one.
No, serious. I'm serious. They should give more attention to that. Add in the educational thing. First thing, they're all talking about science and math. Science and math. We got to get technology. We got to get, you know what I'm saying.
These are
they give such short shrift.
These
to
are
the
all.
Things that
these
really
are
matter.
all. The ideology behind the repression of the arts is that the arts don't serve the military-industrial machine.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, exactly. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but
it's frou-frou. You know, they think
Right.
it's just frou-frou, and
Right.
the things that are really important and urgent have nothing to do. The things that are really important, like art, aren't urgent.
Right.
Making bread on everybody's table or something is urgent, or the food and that
Right.
kind of stuff. And so you got the law of the urgent and the important things aren't given enough attention. And when they go to cut budgets, they're going to cut the arts budget.
Right.
Because it's just, let's get the, you know, okay, I'm sorry, I'm complaining. What do you got a book there, right?
This is a catalog of an artist who I've shown many times.
Yeah, you've curated, how many shows have you curated?
102.
Wow. That's a major thing.
Yes.
And you curate them very carefully. And it's all up on his site that we're going to put at the end. And you can go with magnificent photographs and well-written commentary on the arts and so forth. More very highly recommended to do. We'll put the links up at the end.
Right.
Now, what are you going to do? You're going to show a particular page, or just the book? And
I just wanted to show you some imagery.
You can't do it by having it on your lap. You have to give it to me.
I'm going to.
Select
I'm just
the
checking.
thing. You have to check which one.
Yes.
You have to make a decision.
Well, here we are.
Okay, good. Okay, he's made a decision, ladies and gentlemen. Try and come in on this, and you can talk to it. You see.
This is a work by Carla Ganis. It's called Holy Family Gas Station.
That's great.
Carla makes work. She uses a Photoshop program that allows her to make drawings and then scan them into the program and then create these very, very complex visual images that look like almost like photographs, halfway between a painting and a photograph. And this is herself and her friends modeling as Dallas cheerleaders with little Dallas hats on.
Right.
And the background is one of her boyfriends or male friends who is a centaur, and he's charging towards them.
Closer. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a big oil spill that looks like blood on the ground underneath them, which could stand for Texas oil spills or whatever.
I see.
And I think the centaur probably stands for truth or justice or some
So
Grecian
you're
idea.
doing what he said, the painted word. You're pointing out to the people that this is a great work of art, or this is an important work of art.
She's
and
a very
that's
important
what you do?
young artist.
Now, are all the people that you represent, you must have had thousands of paintings that have been involved in the shows you curated.
Yes.
Are they all equally inspired writers? And how do you pick among the litter which is the most beautiful puppy? To use a mixed metaphor.
Oh.
The painted word again. You know.
Yes.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah, I can see. That's good. Now that I see it up close, it's really good. Yeah, I enjoy it.
And this is her in her vision. That's her own face on on the artist.
Right. Yeah.
I showed this work in a show I did in 2005 at the Spaces Gallery in Cleveland, which is a nonprofit gallery that's been around for 25 years.
Right.
They've been around so long that they've used Warhol grants to pay off their entire lease.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And it was a show called Beautiful Dreamer, and it was about the relationship between radical thinking and daydreaming.
Good thought.
Or fantasy
really
and progressive idealism.
Okay, that's a real important interface.
Yeah.
That really is, yeah.
And it had
with the
28 artists.
Uh-huh.
They brought all the work from New York.
Mm-hmm.
They put us up, and and gave us, they got all the people from the various Cleveland galleries to come and help us install a show. It took a whole week to install.
Yeah, it's an art to do that. Yeah.
2,000 people came to the opening.
No kidding. That was a real event.
They published a catalog as well, which I have.
Put him here,
here somewhere. I was, in advance of coming to see you, I was going through, and I basically just,
you brought a bunch of stuff.
Here's the catalog.
Let me see if they can you come in on this if I hold it up, guys, in the booth? I don't know if they can try to, I don't know if you got control over it, or maybe this camera. Do you have control over this one? Oh, here you go. Okay. Let me get it down. Here we go. Yeah. Now you can zoom in on that. Okay, go ahead, talk to it, David.
So please. This is the show I did in 2005. It was interesting to me because not only was it a chance to deal with a rather large societal idea, but it was actually, I was able to bring a great majority of the artists that I'd worked with into the same show.
Beautiful
and to show them outside of, outside of New York. And I've been doing a lot of shows outside of New York at various venues, many of them university venues.
How do you decide where you're going to go? Do you have more offers than you can handle, or how does it work for somebody who's a real professional, unquote, curator, because it's a very a series of skills that are very important.
Well, you say yes to everything, but you give them a time frame.
I see. You got to keep it in that.
Yeah, I've only really had success in my career since I started thinking a year or two down the pike.
Really? You schedule it out.
Really think about.
And you go around the country, mostly in New York area, or
mostly?
Not?
I find that I'm going to find most of the artists that I need in the 5 boroughs. Sometimes there's an exception, but generally,
it's a great place, isn't it, New York City?
Yeah,
Don't you think it's great? I love New York City.
New York is New York. There's no other place like it. I've also curated shows in the University of Massachusetts in Amherst.
Okay, yeah. There's a lot happening in that.
Recently curated this exhibition.
Okay, let me show it quick. This is another thing.
Site mapping.
Can you come in? Come in.
Come on in.
Come on in.
That's
okay.
Good.
This is another show that you curated.
This is a show I recently curated. Yeah.
Up Amherst. Okay.
Yes.
It takes a lot of attention. Do you have to? How long does it take you to prepare to curate a show? What's involved?
6 months.
6 months so long to do it? Like a show with 20 paintings you're going to do or something? You have to do research?
I have to do research. I have to do all the studio visits. We have to make plans for the work to be shipped.
Supervise the lighting?
Yes, that too. Yeah. Train the interns, all that stuff.
Right, okay. So it's a real profession. And then you write on it.
Yes.
And then you also do photographic, you've got photographs of so many of the works that have been in the exhibits you've done. You got exhibits, all of them, very well displayed.
Yes.
On your sites.
Yes.
So you got a full-time thing going with this thing you've chosen. Do you paint it all yourself?
I have painted, but I have not painted in years. It's really I get up every day to write.
So you think of yourself as a writer?
I do. I think.
Well, then you fit right into the painted word.
That's true.
You're the one who's setting the pace. You're the one who's leading us all down the yellow brick road.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Let me ask you something else, if I could, if you don't mind. No, show more, bring more, because we got about. It looks like we got about 10 minutes left, so we want to show some more images in that.
I'll hold it up. You hold it up. This is actually a Cleveland-based artist who I wrote.
Come in on the other camera, you guys, if you can.
This one.
Yeah, it's going to take him a minute. You talk, just talk.
Yeah,
it'll come up.
This is a Cleveland-based artist who I wrote a catalog essay for. His name is Thomas Frontini. We're not showing the.
No, wait. It'll get to it.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Or maybe they've gotten it locked off or something.
Okay. Anyway.
Maybe I can show it here. Maybe
there
I'll
we
show
go.
it here. There you go.
That's right. He was having a show in Los Angeles, and the gallery liked my essay so much that they used the title of my essay as the title for the show, and they put it on all the advertisements, and now I get mail from all the LA galleries.
No kidding. What was the title?
Limbo Karma.
Limbo Karma, right.
Because it's very dreamy, and he uses imagery from his family as the faces of the people. And,
Well, it must be wonderful working with artists, right?
It is.
Is it also frustrating sometimes? Are they a unique group, or what do you think?
I don't think artists are annoying in any special way, but they can be, certainly. I think it has to do with how open you are to the personalities. And
in all their variegated wonder.
Everyone is different.
Yeah, isn't that great?
I've been introduced to people with very different personalities from my own. I respect them as artists, so therefore I have to accept them as people. It's most important.
So if they're not an artist, you're not going to respect them?
That's not what I said.
I know you didn't. I was trying to put you on the spot.
What I meant was that there are levels to everything. We accept someone as an artist because we love their work. We don't necessarily know them, but once we know them, we like them even more.
There was a woman in the New York Times who was the oldest person in the world according to birth certificates. I don't know if you remember, from 15, 20 years ago. It appeared in the New York Times, page 43. It was in the vernacular in France. She had lived in Arles. And she was 123 years old.
She had met Van Gogh or Gauguin or something like that.
She had not only that, she was 123 years old, and she said she had quit smoking 2 years ago for her health at 121, and that she knew Vincent, the divine one, and he was a real son of a bitch.
Maybe he was.
You know, that kind of thing. But
according to all accounts,
the artists aren't always.
According to all accounts, Vincent was the son of a preacher.
Yeah.
And he was raised in very specific environment, which he got out of at an early age. You know, the northern Dutch territory. Yeah, right. His early paintings were very bleak, and they showed that life. Yeah. And he got out of that, and his work became about color, so that he could get away from that.
Arles.
You know, but he probably retained his father's
dour.
Well, not just dourness, perhaps, but his intensity. You know, and because we do grow into our parents.
I think so. We have a great influence. You were so fortunate to have such wonderful parents to influence you, to put you on this great path you're on. I had a thing I wanted to be. The Balinese have a saying. The Balinese culture has a saying. I suppose you've heard it or not, but they say, "We have no art. We do everything as well as possible." So, singing as you do the laundry, making the thing, everyday life experiences and everything can be done with a flair and with a elan and so forth.
Right.
What do you think of it? Do you think everybody's an artist, or are the artists the chosen few? Or what do you think of that statement? We do no art. We do everything as well as possible.
I think that there's a possibility for everyone to be recognized in the value of what they do if they do it well. Right. Certainly, there was a famous German artist named Joseph Beuys who actually believed, and he said everyone can be an artist.
I wonder that would be a good artist if somebody. I've had a lot of artists.
But his idea of art was that art was not just about making an object. Art was about creating a creed for people to live by, and then to make a better society, you were being artistic.
Yeah, well, you could put that into a lot of different statesmanship, but
well, his idea was he was about creating community and creating and reintegrating, early societal ideas in a contemporary society. The ideas of community, the idea of the hearth, idea of mythical influence on people's believing.
The hearth?
The hearth, sorry.
I'm sorry, that's all right. I got confused by the words,
It's Latinate. And he was an early practitioner of the Green Party. But his work was about transformation.
Hearth could be a good word. It could be a combination of earth and hearth.
That's right.
A nice earthy hearth, or a nice hearthy earth, or something. But I mean, if you had, how many people? I had a statement. I mean, I've had a lot of friends. I've had friends who are painters, and people talk about work, and then they get confused with things like jobs and stuff. But they were work. When an artist at work, I've had artists, my friends are that, and when they're painting and it's really coming and everything, you can't drag them away from the canvas. They're doing what they really want to do. Right. Same with musicians and other things. A great characteristic of inner directed ability to be really engaged. How many people, let's say in life's experience, how many of the 6 billion human beings on the planet, heading for 10, are able to live in that kind of large portions of their life, and they're in the social, political, economic context within which all of society is constructed, are able to live where they can maximize and have that sense of real participation, inner-directed, liberated, for want of another term, creative response and expression in the world. And how many of them is that stamped out because of well, I don't know, poverty or so, from whatever it is that kills that in so many people.
I think that
How many people could be really interdirected and really artistically engaged with life as you see it the way the real artist is?
everyone.
You think so?
Everyone.
That's a great idealistic dream.
A lot of people are, maybe not to the level we call it art. I think that
that's what the Balinese said, everything is art.
People can enjoy their jobs to the point that it makes them happy.
How many do you think do? You could try to rationalize. It's really hard.
That has less to do with the job and more to do with the person.
You think so? So
yeah. A postman can enjoy their job. I have a postman who loves his job.
I used to have a postman in Detroit where I grew up. They used to come, and we had a dog. And the postman would come in and have milk and cookies.
Right.
And then the dog would go with it. It was so Norman Rockwell, it was just
And I mean,
Americana.
there are plenty of people in corporate jobs who love their jobs.
You think so? What percentage do you think?
Okay,
my family's in Detroit. Henry Ford.
Our mayor.
All right. No, I'm seriously thinking, how many people
Bloomberg
enjoys his job?
Oh, I think he enjoys his job as mayor. I think he enjoys, he's a self-made man.
Well, all right, that's true enough. That's right, he could be. But no, I'm seriously asking it. Like, he set up the assembly line, Mr. Ford. He used to tinker in my maternal grandmother's garage when he was about 10. He set up the assembly line. I don't know how you're going to justify a person standing in a particular place, turning a nut on a thing that comes all day long, doing something. Or the women where they have to sew the same seam all day long, 12 hours a day, in order to be able to have some bread to eat that is a lot of so many people, or certain kinds of things like that that are so mundane that there's no creativity to it. You're just like a workhorse.
We call it mundane, but I mean...
You're going to have to stretch some to make that be. You could try and sing or think or be not there, or people. I'm just wondering.
I don't know that everyone is fated to become creative in the same way that we think of creativity.
Well, maybe the Balinese saying we'd have no art, we do everything as well as possible might have leeway.
I think
for
that if all the people who worked in factories in America had the Balinese ideal in mind, maybe it would make them happy.
You think so? They could be happy as slaves. If somebody's a slave, you could justify. The darkies are doing really good. They're happy down there doing that job that we've told them they have to do.
If it weren't for that, we wouldn't have the blues.
Well,
and
that's
the blues
true.
Make us
You're
happy,
right. You're right.
So,
yeah.
And thanks to Ellen Lomax.
Yeah.
So, and John Lomax before that.
And all the people, the keepers of the flame of that kind of thing. And art is a wonderful
That's
thing.
a culture. It's part of a culture.
Yeah.
There are a lot of wonderful indigeneses that come out of a culture where people are repressed.
Yeah, but let's not celebrate the repression.
We're not selling the repression. We're saying
the reaction to
this is part of the reality that we have, but also that the lives of these people is enriched, maybe not by their job, but say their love of God.
If they're
their creativity might come when they go to church. If they're Baptists and sing and they praise their love of God,